If I've learned anything through the years, is to be suspicious of giant concentrations of power. And boy, few concentrations of power really rise to the level that Google has. And when they first started, remember their slogan, or at least internally, their slogan was "Don't be evil." How's that going? What are they up to? Well, according to the Media Research Center, Google has interfered in U.S. elections at least 41 times since 2008. And when Google does it, it has a big effect. Here to discuss the findings, Dan Schneider is here, Vice President of Free Speech America at the Media Research Center. Sir, nice to talk to you today. Thank you.
Vince, you're a great voice on radio. It's great to be with you.
Nice to have you, Dan. This is Google's ubiquitous. Google's everywhere. I mean, I think people use devices that run on Android. They've got email accounts that are provided by Google. Some 90-something% of all search is done on Google. What has that type of power done in terms of its impact on our elections?
Well, it swayed the last election for Joe Biden, for one. But one thing that is so dangerous about Google is that it does its work under cover of darkness. When Facebook would take down accounts or Twitter would ban, the president of the United States, it was all known, it was all open, and people could be angry about it. But what Google does, it does it in a very sinister way. People don't even know that they're being manipulated. It's not so much a news source, but an information source to manipulate people to believe certain things, to make them believe that they know certain things that they just don't.
Right. I think back to the 2020 election in the lead up to it. It was Alan Bukhari over at Breitbart noticed this, and he was right about it, which is that Google had begun suppressing all of the conservative news websites on the planet. If you had a conservative news website and somebody was to type in even verbatim headlines from your site, they wouldn't pop up on Google. Google was going out of its way to keep news consumers from getting their news from conservative sources.
Right. So like on Google News, if you wanted to look for any article about Donald Trump or Joe Biden or even on elections, Google would link to lots of liberal sites, but not a single conservative news outlet would be included. Not a single one. 97% of the articles about the election were to liberal sites, 3% to so-called neutral sites, 0% to conservative sites. Same with Biden, same with Trump. Google directs people specifically to left-wing sites for that, so that people can get the wrong kind of news or a very, very biased news source. But they bury campaign websites of conservatives and Republicans.
Yes.
We did a series of studies right before each of the presidential Republican debates. And we did 2 searches for each of these. One search was looking for Democrat presidential campaign websites, and the other for Republican presidential campaign websites. And, lo and behold, we looked for Democrats, and Joe Biden was the top of the heap, the number 1 search result. And then Marianne Williamson would be included, but not RFK Jr. Ever over the course of 2 months when we did these searches. RFK's website would never show up. And he was, of course, Joe Biden's greatest threat to the nomination. But more surprising was on the Republican side. Only 2 campaign websites were being produced to us when we searched for Republican presidential campaign websites. Marianne Williamson again, a Democrat, and then the only candidate scoring 0% in the polls, Will Hurd. But there was no Donald Trump campaign website, nothing from Vivek, nothing from DeSantis, nothing from Nikki Haley, only Democrat, one Democrat, and a guy polling at 0%.
I remember back in the wake of the 2020 election, the 2016 election after Donald Trump won. I remember at the time there were like videos and things of Google employees crying. They had almost like struggle sessions after this all went down. In fact, there was also some emails that came out that showed that Google had tried to stimulate the Latino vote. They were trying to get Hispanics to show up to the polls under the assumption that they would overwhelmingly vote for Democrats, and they were successful in encouraging Hispanics to go to the polls, but they didn't anticipate that some 29% of Latinos voted for Trump at the time, and that helped get Trump over the finish line, and they were horrified that their efforts to get Latinos to the polls may have actually resulted in a Trump victory.
Yeah, and these same Google executives, and we are talking about the most senior executives at Google, pledged that they would use their power and their resources, and I'm quoting here, to never let the Trump situation happen again. Yeah, and they've been hell bent on making sure that Donald Trump does not win re-election here, and they've done everything they can to suppress Senate Republican candidates'
Yes.
websites. They do not want Republicans or conservatives winning elective office.
So what are the things that we should be on guard for as we get closer and closer to Election Day when it comes to Google's power?
Well, it was 2-3 weeks ago when Google's artificial intelligence was really exposed, when you tried to find a picture of George Washington and it would be a black man, or you try to find a picture of Adolf Hitler and it'd be, an Asian, where Google would intentionally push its DEI agenda through search. And we've now discovered that what Google does is replace your own search query with its own words. So if you look for, George Washington, a picture of George Washington, Google changes the query to a picture of a black George Washington. And it does that with political messaging as well. So what should we do? Well, try not to use Google, or if you do use Google, look for the second and third page of search results before you find real information, real news, because Google wants to just twist the results of what you're actually trying to look for.
Yeah, the artificial intelligence thing really, you're right. It did expose them in a way, I think, to people in the public who hadn't been following the details so closely. They started seeing pictures of black German Nazis and thinking to themselves, that's not right. Like, how in the world would that be the conclusion? How would you come up with something like that? And that was actually the point at which Google started coming out, and their CEO Sundar Pichai came out and was like, "Oh, sorry, this isn't working as intended. We're always working on fixing up the product." Well, how did it arrive at this? And it's the most brain dead answer ever, which is they're trying to force so-called DEI into every single thing, and as a result, it leads to stupid outcomes like that.
Yeah. Well, look, Google's own head of DEI was, put on social media, and I'm quoting him, quote, "Jews have an insatiable appetite for war." This is the same Google that right after the October 7th attacks, if you went to their artificial intelligence and asked, what is Hamas, it couldn't tell you. But it could certainly tell you what Black Lives Matter is, or the Irish Republican Army, but it also could not tell you what the capital of Israel is, even though it could tell you the capital of all four nations that border Israel plus any other capital in the world. Google has this weird fixation on Israel and sort of an anti-Semitic agenda.
Yeah. And then, of course, I bet you there'd be some fun stuff if you started searching China. I think everything from Taiwan to Hong Kong to Tiananmen Square. I wouldn't be surprised if Google produces some very pro-CCP results and all those answers. Speaking of some of the things that Google's doing, even today, Google has apparently, according to some users who've been trying this, you search. I'll even do it right now. Let's say bloodbath definition. Let's see what that is, because we've had a very interesting week. Yeah, bloodbath definition: an event or situation in which many people are killed in a violent manner. That's the live answer to this. As of earlier this week on Sunday, the definition was a ruthless slaughter of a great number of people, a massacre, or a period of disastrous loss or reversal. And the example was a few mutual funds performed well in the general bloodbath of the stock market. So this goes right back to what the left has been arguing all week. How could Trump say bloodbath? He's talking about violence. And Trump was saying, I was talking about the economy. And if you looked on Google on Sunday, they gave an economic definition for the phrase bloodbath. Now, as of Thursday, the economic definition's gone.
Yeah. Well, look, Google has participated in a genuine bloodbath. You mentioned China. The Google employees were happy to work with the Chinese Communist Party and dish up private information of Chinese people using Google in China. But when it came time to working with our own Defense Department, they absolutely refused. They protested and had a boycott. They would work with the Chinese Communist Party, but not with our own Defense Department.
Yeah. So again, your report over at the Media Research Center says that Google has interfered in our elections since 2008 41 times, again, at least 41 times.
Yeah.
Google, I've seen some news coverage of this, and Google has been denying this. They say, oh, we treat everybody the same. In fact, we have every business incentive in the world not to treat people differently on the basis of their politics. How do you react to their answer here?
Well, the second part is true. They have every incentive not to, but it's absolutely untrue that our study has been refuted. They have never even responded to the work that we did showing how they were burying Republican presidential candidates. They have not even responded to it. When we showed how they were burying Senate Republican candidates' websites, they initially had one response saying that there was something flawed about our study, and when they looked at how we were doing our study, they then basically had a non-denial denial, but they have not refuted any of our work, not a single time. And we've challenged the CEO. Show us where we're wrong. Prove that we're wrong. And so far, we've gotten crickets from Google.
Yeah, no, because you've got them dead to rights. Well, thank you very much, Dan Schneider, for your work and the work of the Media Research Center. Always appreciate you guys, and I'm very thankful for your time today, sir.